cold. Right, sorry. So JD, what were you saying now that we're live?
No, I can't do that, man. It's too much pressure.
He won't do it now that we're live.
I've choked.
Sure.
I've choked. No, I can't do that.
We're not a serious show. Anyways, hope you guys are well. Welcome back to the FPL Script. We only appear a few game weeks at a time. But we are so thankful that you guys are still here listening to us and making the time to listen to us waffle about the beautiful game. Today we've got some injury doubts. They're not super substantial, I'd say. They're probably only impacting people's captaincy decisions, which we'll talk about later. What we'd like to use this episode to do is to discuss how we're approaching chip strat solves, some of the things we've learned this season, and to discuss some interesting viewpoints I think we've had on, approach to, let's say, market odds and things like that, and how we've obviously been using that. We will bring back market odds versus massive data next week, so that's the plan. You'll probably see a couple more data visuals from us on that front, and it's just a good time to sort of refresh, I guess, how we view certain players, given that I'm sure there's, of course, still a huge gap on certain assets. For my team, in terms of Gameweek 21, very, very stock standard week, 74 points, so still agreeing, which is nice. Can't complain about going for Bruno because I did sell Mbumo and I netted 2 points. There was maybe a world where I went Rodgers to Ahmad, but I'm kidding. I don't think I was really considering that. Although that was a very interesting line, and it is relevant once again back to xMins because I've always been running Ahmad at 89 xMins, which made him, a competing solve option. Otherwise, Isak did well, but a lot of us probably just stuck the captaincy on Palmer. Thank you, Cindy, as well. I got to play Rodgers. I benched Chris Wood. Don't want to show you guys that because that's just, who would do that? That's bad play, playing Chris Wood versus Liverpool. I wouldn't do it. Odegaard, he played. He actually did something, which was nice. He actually looks like a real football player as well now that he is flu immune. And that's it. That's my team recap. What about you, JD?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be back, and thank you, Fran, for putting me on the spot there. Maybe in the future we'll try a Liverpudlian accent in the future. Yeah,
that's right.
So yeah, I know. So finally, yeah, it's one of those weeks where Salah finally black, and I had Odegaard in his place in the team, I suppose. So yeah, it's like 6 points gained and about 1 million points lost. So yeah, we move. And Fran also said that there's not major news with respect to injuries. I beg to disagree. Like, my team is actually in tatters if both Colville and Palmer don't play. So I'm really hoping Maresca is trying to be just overly cautious and they'll end up playing because the alternatives are just horrendous. Other than that, the defense is just horror. There's no clean sheets, and I was thinking because up until yesterday's games, I had like sizable chunk of positive variance in that week, like 7+, and then by the end it was like 1 because Ahmad scored 20 and no one actually did anything in my team, which is João Pedro. So yeah, we'll see where this goes next week. But I think the no Salah experiment might be over finally.
That's big news. Big news on the podcast, actually. Imagine if we didn't have an episode and you just suddenly saw Salah on JD's team. I wouldn't know how to react myself. Right, so Salah news aside, shall we just discuss first topic that we wanted to go through, which is just how we're solving right now. I'll probably go first. What I'm doing right now is just running...
before you discuss this, I just wanted to let everyone know in case people missed it. I'm sure they didn't, but Review has incorporated Assistant Manager into all the features except sensitivity analysis, I believe.
Which is down overall, right?
Yeah, exactly. So now people can actually run solves and look at future plans based on Assistant Manager. So yeah, sorry for that.
Nice. We also got FA Cup dates just announced, if anyone's interested. Not that it really matters, but yeah, I think in terms of the chip strategy usage, this is obviously the FPL Review kind of template for looking at. applying chip strats to solves. I'm sure people do their solves in collab, but are probably less interested, I suppose, in this subject anyways. But from my perspective, what I'm doing is just adjusting the kind of binary fixture odds in Gameweek 29 now. And I'm still, I suppose, obviously that should incentivize me to also adjust the reverse fixture, right? For, let's say, Gameweek 33. But I haven't gone that far because a lot of my solves are still with a wildcard 30 or 31 in mind. And that means I'm, dead ending into Gameweek 29. And who knows, of course, with the slight change in terms of the amount of free transfers we have now, you don't necessarily need to wildcard with no free transfers. So it all comes down to how I plan out my transfers as we head out of the double. I'm not sure if we last recorded the podcast with the double Gameweek 24 announced. Is that news to us?
It was.
Yeah.
No, it was. We did discuss it.
Okay, fine. So yeah, I mean, we know that that's in place. There's still a small chance of Fulham versus Tottenham in Gameweek 25, right? But beyond that, yeah, binary fixture probabilities. In most of my solves, I have to say I've been running Fulham Tottenham at 0, just anticipating that it doesn't happen. But it's just worth running solves in these different kind of landscapes. Gameweek 33, as I said, is basically the reverse of Gameweek 29. So now that that's on the horizon for a 12 game week span, you can kind of look into that as well. Maybe some preliminary chip strat solves can be helpful, but it doesn't really give you a good idea of what you can benefit within the landscape. And then the alternative solve, of course, is just a free at 29 solve, as opposed to 30, 31 wildcard. And that really just means that I'm looking at how different my transfers are, because I think the reason I'm running so many different solves on different binary outcomes as well in Gameweek 29 is just trying to get an understanding of how I would navigate my free transfers up until maybe, let's say, Gameweek 28, where we probably have to make these kind of set in stone decisions on certain players. And I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about more specifically their Newcastle assets, right? And whether you need to hold on to them and when you drop them off, that sort of thing, because it actually has impacts. And I think it's starting to seep through where it doesn't really affect me, to be quite honest, but it does affect some other people. Where on Gameweek 24, I mean, if you are doing Isak to DCL, hats off to you as a manager, because yeah, fair play. What about you?
So I think you've covered most of the things that I've been trying to solve. And like you said, the biggest thing is trying to compare whatever chip strategies you have, not for the purpose of the expected value of the paths, but actually just to see what the immediate transfers are based on those paths.
Yeah.
Because the longer you can delay that decision, that's better for your team. The first sort of milestone is between game or in the middle of double game week 24, where the transfer window ends. And we'll probably get to this in the minutes. Sorry, xMins corner, but there's some consideration for probably waiting as much as we can before making moves for certain players. But other than that, even for certain fixtures to fall, like you said, you're better off solving them using binary values of assuming certain results and then running with that, rather than trying to solve with fractional values. So I was thinking from a sensitivity analysis perspective, this is another element to that. I don't know. I think it will be too much for review to not implement, I guess, but it's more of a computational challenge, where I was thinking you could actually also give users that functionality of not just solve 100 times and then give you results of the sensitivity analysis, but use all different scenarios.
Yeah.
For Gameweek 29. Exactly, right? Because right now you're having to do this manually, and it's quite cumbersome, and you probably stop at the top 2 scenarios where what you think is most likely, or even let's be fair, the most likely scenario, because it's long enough as it is when you do heavy plus solves. So I was thinking maybe that is something that review could possibly implement, but I might suggest it to him, but I don't think it's going to be likely implemented before when we need it. So for now, it's either you can use Sartab's collab solver to accomplish something like this, where you can just aggregate results of every single fixture combination, or you can just run top 1, top 2 likely scenarios on review.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think there's too much to talk about. But I think the general point of logic here is not so that you can kind of see the different paths you can go, but maybe rather instead looking at the path that actually solves, or the purpose of being able to grab EV going forwards, whilst taking into account the most likely scenarios. So it doesn't make sense to kind of hedge. I say this, by the way, as someone who totally hedged versus fixture results last season. It didn't go so well, wildcard 26. But yeah, I think right now, because you're not going to be pressing any big chip strat sort of type of buttons soon, you're still best served getting more information up until you do that. I think that free at 29 is appealing to a lot of people because of this element of being able to keep your money in the bank.
Yes.
It's nice when you look at free at 29. I think we actually just had a brief discussion on it. That's roughly 57 EV worth, that blank. So it's actually a not a very high ceiling blank, right? If you want to put it like that, and if you're a manager who wants to subscribe, I guess, to that argument. But we also know that planning for blanks just means it's about really optimizing game weeks in and out of the blank, and as opposed to actually the blank itself. So, however, some people will probably disagree anyways, because it involves selling certain picks. If you don't free it. So yeah, Isak probably has to go, Trent has to go, or Salah has to go. Two out of three of those players will probably go, and I'm sure most people will be leaning towards selling only one out of those players in terms of selling Isak, because I, for example, I mean, this doesn't apply to you, unfortunately. I've got like 0.9 over Isak. I've got 0.8 over Salah, I believe, and maybe like equally 0.8 on someone like Palmer, who I literally forgot to mention, but is also very likely to blank. Even more so than, let's say, Salah. So that is the outcome. Palmer, though, is a pick that we probably will see on the wild card coming out of it. So is Salah, I'd say. Maybe not so Isak, but actually Newcastle have their poor run of games leading up to Game Week 30. And then I actually think he probably still will sit in our team. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on free at 29. Do you think it's more a case where people who are leaning towards free at 29 are only going to consider it because of that in the bank value, or because we just lack so much information now, I guess, is my key point.
Yes, I think the information point is the most valid point, but just a caveat for people listening that Fran can actually be largely agnostic about this just because of his team value. I think you can actually afford to sell Salah and then bring him back, which would then bring you down to, I don't know, whatever is the median, or still above median, but closer to the median team value in Elite 1K, let's say. But right now, you can at least be agnostic about, okay, I don't care about team value for now. Let's just run through what are the different paths. And of course, the two paths are free 29 and wildcard 30 right now. So from that perspective, like you said, I also have 0.8 in Isaac, I have 0.7 in Palmer. It's not going to be easy. But I don't have any in Salah, which is the most important point, because a lot of people bought him at 12.5. He's 13.7 now, and it's genuinely going to be difficult to sell him and then immediately bring him back on wildcard for some people. Or if you could, but then you're probably sacrificing somewhere else in terms of buying players, or maybe you downgrade the goalkeeper. There's going to be something. So from that perspective, I do understand it, but again, after that point, you also have to see that the team value you are gaining, does it actually have enough time to make up that EV that you're going to lose? If let's say free 29 is more optimal on pure expected value, then is that actually going to be your tiebreaker, the team value? I it's very difficult to understand right now. Like you said, we're just lacking a lot of information right now. So as much as you can, I would advocate being agnostic to team value, but I understand it's not possible for everyone, including someone like myself, where I'm on the other side of the spectrum, and I'm almost willing to sell Salah again because I have actually no money invested in him. So it's very easy for me to sell him. So for me, free hit 29 actually has very few merits compared to let's say people that have all this money invested in all the assets.
Yeah, it has free
So it's
0 minutes for you now from this position. I
yeah,
think that, and
now
that's the
you're right.
main thing. Like
Yes.
the people who are planning for free at 29 now must be doing it for indirect reasons in my mind, because
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
there's so much uncertainty.
Absolutely. And you can sell Trent probably because the max you would have gotten out of him is 0.2, but that's not really the point. It's also about free transfers, right? Because
True.
The paths I've been looking at, if I free hit, I do end up with 3 to 4 free transfers by the end of the path, which is Gameweek 33. But if I play the wildcard in 13, no matter what path I take, it still leaves me with at the most one or two free transfers. So there's a sizable difference in where you get to spend your free transfers. So I don't know. It's still very uncertain for me, and I understand that I'm not being very precise with what people are I don't know what I'm prescribing people to do, but it's genuinely up in the air right now. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think, I mean, the only impact really of the FA Cup results is that it's slightly raised the average amount of fixtures that we did, but like by a minuscule amount. You know, in the 30 plus period. So what we could do, I suppose, is you have a small amount of the horizon. You could run, in theory, like a wild card 30 solve with how much you expect to lose in sell value, and then just kind of see, even from, you know, first 3 weeks, I guess, with, you know, binary outcomes reversed of 29, how that impacts even you for a few weeks at a time, because that's still a small amount of the slate, but you get a feel, right? Because I still think by the time we get to that point in the season, teams and players from Newcastle, Liverpool, and Chelsea are all going to be good. And in terms of the team value thing, I'm not expecting Saka to really maybe return this season still. But I mean, if he comes back, then that has some impacts on team value, because he's suddenly a very, very good pick that, considering his price point as it is now, like I think we'd probably forced into some tougher decisions. Another thing to mention in terms of general team value is we obviously look at, let's say, the average value of what an X point gives you, or like an additional 0.1 in terms of sell value gives you. But there's so many good budget picks in the game right now in the midfield position. I just think we're spoiled almost. The issue, I suppose, is that the forward position is where you're lacking value, and it's actually those budget forwards where they're quite poor, and so you have to spend quite a fair bit to actually get a decent forward and to ship out, let's say, a team of, let's say, 7 attackers, and I think that might be the one pressing point. But you're never going to really go wrong with, let's say, João Pedro plus another striker, whether it's Isak or Jackson. So I kind of feel like team value is definitely nice. It probably gives you a niche little benefit in terms of the defense, the goalkeeping aspect. But beyond that, I just think there's so many good routes in the game to get points, and it's like Semenyo, Rogers, Ahmad. These are all crazy players, like Dango as well. Sar, who's even apparently had a doubt today. These are all players who can give you value. And I'm sitting here owning Bruno and Odegaard, looking at the rest of the people owning these budget mids and just laughing, because it's tough. It's tough to take out there. I believe Ahmad has is already, like, let's say, outscoring Bruno on points this season. Is that true?
Yeah. Also, I mean, yeah, you pointed that out yesterday. And the second thing is, as a result, people who actually own Salah and Holland have actually gotten away with it, because you could own 3 of those players and you're still getting 1 player to haul, and on average you're getting 6 to 7 points from, let's say, like combined average of those 3 players. So it's actually been very feasible this season, which makes you rethink certain things. Like, you could actually roll with Saka if he's ever back and not worry about team value, because what you would be doing is at the most sacrificing Eze for Sa, let's say, and it's not the end of the world this season.
Yeah, but we're still very much Team Odegaard in this podcast. Is that correct?
Yes, for now.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Okay, next topic is going to be just looking at the injury doubts aspect of things. So I thought it'd be quite useful to use Elevenify's projections. This probably doesn't include the update post Maresca press conference. So Keep in mind that is going to have a significant impact on Palmer, his expected minutes, even the team strength overall with Chelsea, right? With Enzo, Colwill, and is it Lavia as well? 4 players, 4
Yes,
good
Lavia.
players.
Yeah.
All presumed doubts for this game. That's quite significant. And I would say of all the managers in the league, Enzo's probably the least waffly from teams that we
Who's the
care
fourth?
about.
Sorry.
Sorry?
Who's the fourth
Enzo,
player?
Lavia, Palmer, Colwill.
Oh, Enzo as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My bad. Okay. Yeah.
But that's it's not great news. I think I would expect at least 2 of those players to play. I suppose with Colwill, he's more of a 0-90 for me, so people can just make that decision. Like, you can just start him. I don't think there's going to be a huge worry there. Him coming off the bench sounds ridiculous to me. Unless, like, let's say someone is playing in the center back position and just having a generational stinker, and he's somehow finds his way on the bench, which is possible, but still unlikely. If he's not fit to be risked for the game, I still think that's likely with Palmer. And with Enzo and Lavia, I suppose it's really, if one of the 2 of them are fit, maybe you can still get out a functioning team, because you've also got Reece James to play certain positions on the pitch, which could work out quite well. But yeah, I mean, Palmer's very much outright the best option if you know, before that news. And I guess one of the interesting arguments is always, we see, let's say, when Rob T shares his like spread market movements, and we hear about certain things and we see the market react to things. What's a good example? Maybe let's say, when let's say Tottenham put out a really on paper bad lineup in the evening with all the predicted lineups that was versus Newcastle. We had rumors of Son getting benched and Madison getting benched, but that was, I think, presumed. It was more so like the sickness around the defenders that a lot of people bought into and probably moved the odds a lot, because reality is Madison's been sort of sitting on the bench all season long. I can't imagine that shifts odds. And I doubt Son is that significant either, unless the markets dislike Werner that much, which I can appreciate why you would. But sometimes it does feel like, I don't know if we're overcooking too much, because we're looking at how believable these managers are and how often they tell the truth to us. So Palmer here looks like the best
So there's
option.
one more example. One more example that came to my mind, which was Harry Kane was a doubt for the Aston Villa game in Champions League this season, and I was tracking the odds all throughout the day before and the day off, and I noticed that they didn't move significantly. And okay, there's a twofold way of looking at it, right? So one way you can think of is, okay, team strengths are not that reliant. So, maybe Muller can step in and do a half decent job, and they're still good enough as a team. But the other thing you can think of is, okay, the markets don't have enough information, so they don't want to react in either direction.
Yeah.
So I'm still waiting for that Palmer news, rather the reaction to that Palmer news on market odds, to see how they react. But again, how much signal is there in that movement is highly debatable for me.
Yeah, as always, this is like point in time stuff, and I think using a point in time before all this news has come out is a good indication of, in theory, what it is. But you also have to take into account that, like, Enzo is believable as a manager, I'd say right now, like what he says, and that sure, Palmer, if he's even mentioned that Palmer has an knock that he's been training, that maybe has a bit of a dent for Palmer himself and his, I don't know, output or performance, right? Because it's not like you're either injured or not injured. I mean, even if you want to put it like that, like, all these injuries can affect your performance even a little bit. So yeah, it's interesting how we take a lot of things into this account. And even myself, I can say, looking at review, like, we've definitely seen a little bit of an odd shift in terms of Palmer, and not on availability, but more specifically on the kind of per 95 EV, where maybe you're looking at review taking into account some of the other knocks within the team, and how we're expecting the overall performance of Chelsea to drop as a result of that based on expectations. But Salah just seems like a really solid vice captain this week, and we can talk about that in the vice captain segment. But I think that what you have always with someone like Salah is that guarantee of him playing 95 is always there. And so when you have doubts in your team and you think that, Palmer can go A, B, X, Y, Z scenarios long in terms of what the outcomes are for him, then it probably always makes sense to go Palmer or to go Salah if he's close. And I'm a little bit resigned to that now, to be honest, because I didn't really, when I actually thought about the Chelsea lineup and I thought about all the midfield injuries, and even, let's say, Colwill being out, it's quite significant. they don't probably have a great center back pair right now either. It could be maybe, I don't know if Colbill's out. You're talking maybe Chalobah in, maybe
Yeah.
Tosin could play. So it's not looking great. Any thoughts in terms of any of the other top leading options here? I would also say that Elevenify's always had strong confidence on Gordon as a pick, and this is nice to just see pure goals and assists, right? Because we like using Rob T's data, but he mostly shares the goal spreads. It's always nice to actually get the assist spreads in here to get an impact, and you see the true fantasy impact on the right hand side. But the beauty of review, of course, is it like when you look at the model and the projections, and I'm sure Elevenify's fast fantasy model does this too, but he'll also be able to show you the bonus impacts of certain things through modeling and things like that. And any thoughts though on certain players? Havertz is interesting because it just shows you how much Arsenal depended on him over this run. He's become quite a top center forward option, and Gordon's still really good, and so is Wood, right? And this is Elevenify, a model that doesn't use market data or to kind of, I think, imply any of the probabilities. So that's really interesting on how much Wood's baselines have probably moved seasonally. But it's Southampton at home, so maybe it's just Southampton at home.
So I'm having some trouble. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. I think it is quite an interesting week. What I would say about Nottingham Forest players is that this isn't a great week to jump onto them, because you have to think about that sort of long horizon where maybe in the context of Wood, where we, as I said, are lacking center forwards, it makes sense to jump onto him still. Whereas I'd say with some of the defenders, they're a very good defense, but they have very, very average or even below average fixtures. And so it doesn't seem like such a great buy. As far as, let's say, some of the other picks, Newcastle, their fixtures are about to kind of hit a bit of a roadblock, and it has implications as well on potential blank Gameweek 29. But United, Arsenal, these are teams that still have a pretty high chance of actually continuing to play past Gameweek 29 and including Gameweek 29. Yeah, they're still, that's why they're teams that we're very much invested into, generally speaking. And there's a lot of picks that we own within these certain teams. There was some Saliba injury doubts as well. I'm not sure what the impacts are on Arsenal defense when Saliba is out of the team. I'm sure they're honestly gargantuan because he's a great player. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Zirkzee is not going to play against him every week. So no, I'm just kidding.
All right.
So he actually that was good to watch. But anyway, so the stuff you mentioned about assists odds, right? And this is a very weird thing about spread odds for assists. The markets are so unreliable that they can drop 10 minutes before the game, or they might not even drop in some cases. So I think that's the only reason why Opti has refrained from sharing them week in, week out, because I try to do that for UCL Fantasy and it's never predictable. Like you could have it for, I think, the top 2-3
you just barely ever
games, but it's so unreliable. It's not even worth going into it, because it seems like there isn't enough incentive. Like I don't think many people are actually putting money into it, which is why they don't bother putting up the odds. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy with. Sorry, what did you say?
No, that's a fair point. I didn't actually think about it like that.
Yeah. And I was just going to say that, for Gordon, we were discussing before we started the pod that it's good to see review also rating Gordon pretty highly now, and it's just a question of his minutes, right? It's always been that now, especially this season where he's consistently getting subbed.
Been slightly worse, pretty big.
Yeah, before 80, and I don't begrudge review now setting his default minutes to like 78. It's completely fair, because last 5 games he's played, I think 3 games 77, 1 game is like 84, and 1 game 90. So I would still say that the minutes are probably closer to 80 than 90, which is okay. I mean, Almiron exists. Jacob Murphy is playing brilliantly right now. So, and Harvey Barnes, once he's back, I don't know how much more that's going to impact an early but early year substitution, I should say. Yeah. But I mean, he's still first choice. So it's not largely irrelevant, but it's irrelevant, I think. For people that already own him, you'll still keep him till at least Fulham, and then reevaluate, because I mean, I don't know. Even City this season, it's not a difficult game as it is, and his EV is not bad for us to keep him through that. But the blank is definitely going to force some decisions before we actually get to game week 29.
I think that's fair. On Gordon as well, I think the interesting thing is how well Jacob Murphy has played, and clearly Gordon's first choice, you'd say, but there have been game states where you see Gordon subbed earlier than Jacob Murphy, and that probably has been the biggest dynamic shift within the team on form, if you want to put it like that. So yeah, he's been incredible so far. I'd like to get someone who actually can match him in terms of points in my team for once, but I think Almiron's leaving the team. So when we're talking about Newcastle, it'll
really just be Harvey Barnes.
It's just Harvey Barnes. But as I said, with Murphy playing slightly better, then sometimes you see that. And also Newcastle they've been kind of throwing, like they've been throwing out these really early defensive subs at 70, 80 minutes and just consolidating on the win. And not just because they're 3-0 up versus a team like Wolves, but sometimes even in, like, let's say the Tottenham game, for example, where you see a pretty reasonably early Isak and Gordon sub in a game state where I think it was still quite precarious because Tottenham played quite well in that second half. So things were kind of going against the run of play for them, and so they just decided to do that. But yeah, quite significant. Otherwise, let's just have a look at what else we have in store. Sorry, we have the xMins corner, not Odegaard, who's actually dropped in price since that little image was produced. But anything interesting in terms of xMins? I wanted to actually use this corner to maybe discuss
Everton. I'm assuming.
Yeah, Everton. I mean, to me, a lot of people are going to get them on Souls. They're going to be looking at Everton. I'm sure most of the general player base is still not looking at Everton, unless you're looking to shop a defender now. This is an interesting game week because you've got Tottenham at home, so it's not really what I would call a great game week for a defender. But let's be honest, no game weeks are good ever for an Everton attacker. So you're just looking for some decent. I'm kidding, by the way. JD has NDI. I don't want to roast him too much, but maybe you can argue that NDI is also a defender if you see where he is positioned on the field. I'm kidding.
And his XA.
But no, I mean, we saw Moyes one game in charge. His press conference was absolutely crazy in the sense that I've never seen a manager state how utterly stark the landscape is for his job ahead, and for what tools he has, I suppose, to carry out this job. We know Dominic Calvert-Lewin's there. He referenced bad finishing in his post-match presser. They don't have options because Broja is out for 10 to 12 weeks, maybe longer than that. I think they're trying to cancel that loan. We have the transfer window open. And there's been a lot of talk about Mykolenko, maybe a lot of talk from Everton fans. And as Bullet says, beware of fans. But Mykolenko's been playing quite a fair bit of football for someone who I've seen quoted should be deported back to Ukraine. So he's played a lot of minutes, and I can't imagine it'll change too much. And the biggest source of uncertainty is you don't know how fast Moyes can react on multiple stages of this team, like maybe Ndiaye's positioning, the striker position, whether they cancel reissue loans because Broja is a blocker now, and then whether they actually go into the market for certain players. It also seems like their PSR issues and just general profit issues have maybe left them for now. So who knows if Everton can spend? But I know we saw earlier that they were kind of looking for someone like Philogene, so maybe another attacker is going to be looked at.
No, Philogene already moved to Ipswich. He was there.
They were linked with Philogene, so it probably suggested that they were inclined to spend on a certain player. Maybe for Jack Harrison, I think, because people don't love him, from what I can tell, and neither do I, because he really should have scored versus Man City if he could have. But yeah, any thoughts on Everton yourself? I mean, you own NDI, and I think the beauty of NDI is that the minutes are guaranteed, I would say.
Yeah, that's the only thing that is guaranteed, to be honest. If you look at his production, XGI, it's just absolutely dire. But this Leicester game in the double game week, so as long as he can get to that, it's going to be okay. And then I can just bench him for the foreseeable. So when I was looking at solves, and it's weird. So when I was solving for triple captaincy 24 like 3 weeks ago, it kept suggesting Gabriel to Konate. It kept suggesting.
Yeah. I'm not getting those solves anymore.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
Arsenal baselines have moved in the opposite direction to Liverpool, right?
That's actually what I was coming to. It seems like Liverpool baselines have slightly dropped because they seem to not be able to keep any clean sheets anymore. And Arsenal baselines have always been strong, but it seems like
it's gone up 100%.
The presence of all their main defenders, it seems to have, and also I think with Miles Kelly,
he's such a
player. He has more data, right? And it's clear that his presence is not making any difference. So if anything, he's actually better. I mean, it's strange to say, but
he's reliable
because he's playing week in week out. So it's Gabriel to Konate has absolutely disappeared from all solves. The only thing I can think of is, and very strangely, Mbumo is back on the table for me. So it's asking me to do Gordon to Mbumo in 24 for some of the solves, which is quite strange.
I'm doing that too, though. I think it kind of it's probably just an indication of without McNeil, there's not much value within the game, and if you're tripled up on Liverpool, you're tripled up on Liverpool. I mean, you don't have an Everton defender now, do you?
I don't. And I was looking at Pickford.
Or looking to shop one?
Pickford. That's the extent to which I would
right, look at. You'll never bring Becker into your team again.
Who?
Alisson Becker.
Oh, Becker. Yeah. No, it's just that he's too expensive. Yeah. Also, this is the one hedge I've tried to keep till Gameweek 24, which is he gets injured and Kelleher actually plays. But I've ended up losing 0.3 million on Kelleher.
Oh, God. How much is he now? 4.
Yeah, he's 4.1 now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I bought him at 4.4. He went up to 4.6. And because everyone sold him after that point, he's now gone down to 4.1.
Yeah.
And there's never a justification to sell him because Flecken's there. So why would I spend a free transfer on him?
It is weird how that works, though, in terms of the game must have some sort of insurance for these kind of crazy drops. But that has been like a new change this season, it feels like. Have we said that? Or I don't know.
I think you're absolutely right. So see, this is what I was thinking. Again, because I have anecdotal evidence, I don't want to harp on too much about these things. But from what you say, it absolutely makes sense that these things were not happening with such regularity in previous seasons, where there's just no sensible stopping point.
Exactly,
it's just,
like in terms of paying reference to the player's starting price within the actual game week 1. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, like I think we've been advocates of the fact that you should have had Kelleher at 5 to begin with. Mm-hmm. There was no reason to have him at 4.5. Yeah. So if he were at 5, that would have automatically stopped all of this.
Yeah, Dubravka as well annoys me so much that people have access to him at 4.3 or 4.2, whatever it is.
Yeah. He's 4.3 now, I think, but you were right. He was 4.2 not that long ago. So it's infuriating for me. I've lost 0.3 for no apparent reason. So the only thing is I'm trying to hold off till 24, and if by some miracle Alisson doesn't play, then fine. But if he does, then I'll have to switch to Pickford. So that's the only defender. I don't know, Branthwaite or Ashley Young do seem to be, or Tarkowski even, do seem to be fairly nailed. But like you said, there's not really any value in any of the... So here's the thing. Even in Pickford, I have to... It's not the best line. It's like 2 EV off the top line. So I am actually losing EV if I go Pickford. Because the ideal path for me from now till triple captaincy is, of course, bring in Salah. And then the next thing is Gordon to Mbumo. That's it. So I am stuck with Kelleher in the double, which is, it makes no difference. So it's Trent, Salah, and NDI. That's it. So
I do like probably that move, though, Gordon to Mbumo for your team.
I'm probably going to do it because it's the most robust line.
Yeah.
And it'll probably mean that we have further visibility of fixtures, and I'll have more transfers for that. But yeah, it's how much I want EV for that week, right? Because if I spend all my free transfers towards that double game week, I end up with like 97 EV with the triple captaincy. Mm-hmm. But if I go with the best line, then it's like 93.2. So am I really going to go all in on that double game week? It's something that I have to consider.
Yeah, because something I'm looking at now, for example, is I just had a brief look at if you remove the double from Pickford, Flecken actually has the exact same amount of EV as him in all the game weeks pre and post. So that is like a lot of hedging almost on a certain outcome. Obviously the EV's there, and the EV will always be there for a game like Leicester at home as well. But yeah, I do really like Mbeumo because he just has such a good run of games. I'm actually looking at Mbeumo as well, and I probably will own one Everton player myself, at best two. But I'm more inclined to do the same as you, which is someone to Mbeumo, in my case, Odegaard, as opposed to, I don't know, getting a Mikolenko into my team, or getting not Pickford, because I'll be going for Alisson, but maybe, I don't know, another midfielder at the time. Say, if let's say McNeil is somehow fit and available, which seems unlikely. If he suddenly is available, then I could maybe do a Rodgers to McNeil, and then a bit of a yo-yo back into another different, better budget mid like an Ahmad. But I don't think I'll be there with double Everton. So it seems like all things are lined up for me to go for an Everton forward, which I don't love the look of. I mean, how do you like the sound of a move like Wood to DCL/NDI and Valdemarsson to Alisson?
So how many free transfers do you have for this week?
I've got one, and I'm rolling it.
Okay, so you left 2 or possibly 3 for triple game.
I'll have 3 for double game week. Yeah,
double game week 24. So
yeah, I'll have 3.
Assuming 3 free transfers, it makes sense to do at least one of those 2 moves, and I think Valdemarsson to Alisson is probably the better one. But again, it depends on what your confidence level is.
Purely to get Alisson, which is
exactly.
I don't love the idea of spending so much on goalkeepers. I mean, I'm basically,
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's 6 million goalkeepers, by the way.
Yeah. That's going to be very troublesome. And then the other thing is, I was thinking, so there's some talk that DCL might leave, or I don't know, he'll be benched, and they'll try some other system where India is striker, or whoever they buy instead of for DCL striker.
DCL versus Leicester at home, and then find the team changes for the next game. But I guess at that point you're like, whatever.
The majority of his EV is in that game, though. Exactly. So as long as you get that game, you're
that's
still...
what I'm trying to say. It's not so bad in that context.
Yeah.
If he suddenly leaves. But how often are people deadline day transfers? And I just, I don't know if he's like someone that Everton are desperate to sell for now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have my finger on the pulse with Everton, but neither. I find it very unlikely that he would leave in such an unceremonious fashion. Okay, again, like I said, I might be completely waffling, but just seems very unlikely to me that he would leave like that. So I do understand why people want to go there, because if DCL and NDI are on the pitch, then DCL definitely takes the penalty. But I'm just banking on the fact that maybe DCL loses some minutes and NDI takes a penalty or something like that. I don't know. It's both are dire options. Yeah, but honestly, I saw the Villa game and DCL was at least getting chances, which is what we want. He did, I think, miss 2 big chances in that game, and he had decent XG. So if people want to go there, I completely understand. It's just the minutes that are perhaps the only factor.
Outside of that, I feel like the landscape is a bit weird, where a lot of the niche picks are just too good. So as I said, Emmanuel Ahmad, Rodgers, maybe even any other Bournemouth mid, and Sarr are, I think, way too good in that 5 million position. Dango is the most interesting, where I think he actually is someone that no one's going to touch in terms of minutes, but he actually has a very serious and healthy amount of EV if you actually believe his minutes are real. And yeah, I think I might be approaching, just looking at market odds as well. Like, Ahmad's clearly very well rated, but that's just a Man United player. Hard to say that he's not good, because I don't know. He just scored a hat-trick and really tilted me. But...
Okay. Do you want to discuss this, by the way? It might technically not belong in this section, but 2 things about United. One is United obviously the insane EV boost that they've gotten, all United assets. And the second is just to sort of complement the discussion you had for Ahmad, which is you were keeping his minutes at 89.
Yeah,
but
I was.
What has changed, I would say, from last night's performance is it's clear now that he has to occupy that right number 10 slot. Yeah. Unfortunately, none of our other players apparently can do the same job. So It's either going to be Bruno / Garnacho. I mean, whichever one of those players is in the other 10 position, and then Bruno will play deeper if needed. So unfortunately, that game actually dents Bruno's appeal a little bit, but
I think
it's
so.
not.
It does. Yeah.
It's not too much. It does definitely. It increases Ahmad's appeal because it's a fixed position. It's consistent minutes in that position, and it's closer to goal and everything else that people already know. Which I don't know. If we knew about that earlier, maybe we would have made some different decisions. But yeah, it's temps the brakes.
Yeah, but it's a weird one, right? Because obviously, like I don't know, like Amram was very much comfortable playing him right wing back, which
and he still might be, by the way, because the first thing he said after that hat trick was he has to improve a lot.
Yeah, although I think that's his default response to anyone scoring.
It is. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I get that.
I'm just saying. It's.
I think
it's
the main
guaranteed.
concern if you're a Bruno owner is actually just the level of performance from Mainu, right? Because there's not many people who actually he can play in the center mid position.
And Ugarte was gassed, exactly. And he said that after the game that Ugarte needs a rest, so it's going to be very difficult. Yeah,
not great looking for Bruno going forwards, but yeah, Ahmad is just a pretty broken pick. And I think, as I was always saying in some of our group chats, is if you've looked at any model and their appreciation for like a very consistent Man United attacker, the EV has always been great. Like if we remember any start of the season where we have Rashford with good minutes expectations, like he's one of the top midfielders in the game. So, no surprise to me that Ahmad is one of the best picks in the game. And I think if you want to see where the positional share goes in a few weeks' time, you can reassess, because for me, as someone who owns Rodgers, I'll probably not need Ahmad for the next few weeks. And then I can make a decision on Gameweek 26 instead, where I either go for Semenyo or Amad Diallo. And it just comes down to whether I have that same level of confidence, whether Ahmad's baselines continue to kind of shift up, which they really haven't, consistently just moving up. And not just because of a Man United boost, but because since Amram has come into charge, I've seen a very consistent, like, moving in those baseline shifts for him. The defense
also, we have to understand,
though,
just one last thing on that. Also, we have to understand that in Tenak's tenure, we were never, largely it was 4-2-3-1, but were you convinced 100% that it would not change the next game based on whatever happened in the previous game? I'm not sure. But now we know for a fact that this is going to be how they're going to play, regardless of what the result is for, like, even if you lose 10 games in a row, it's going to be the same system. So I think it's much more predictable in terms of expected value. So my confidence level in baseline EV projections is higher, but I'm still, and I said this in the group chat, right? In a sense, I don't understand the need to question EV projections, because once you start questioning them,
you need to question
I don't know where to stop.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. I can't judge it, which is the whole reason why I use EV. So it's very difficult for me to draw a line in the sand. But I do appreciate, I also understand the argument from the other side, which is, I think you made it yesterday, which is that markets always overestimate United.
Yeah.
And the thing is with markets is we've overperformed our XG for, I don't know what, 3-4 seasons in a row. And they only look at goals and goals conceded. So it's just a constant sort of spiral where United are getting over and over estimated by market odds.
But that argument that, for example, StatsDan postulate, which is that there are more United fans that therefore bet on United, do you think does that mean anything?
I'm not the best person to answer this, but Billy is in the Discord server probably has a better answer, and I think Ollie as well. This has been discussed to a large extent, that does having a lot more United fans who bet on United wins blindly change the sort of market odds perspective of EV? And the answer is it's not to the extent that people think.
Yeah, of course.
Now I don't have the numbers to quantify, and I'm pretty sure someone smarter than me does.
Another thing that you could postulate, though, is that it's not even just how the lines shift. It's just that maybe the argument is that, I'm being very crude here, but you know that people are just going to blindly bet anyways, so you just set the lines ridiculously poor anyways before you know like the shifts come in, because you're just anticipating people will buy these like hopeless United
Yes,
points, I suppose.
and
And
then lose
so the
their money,
baselines for
which
United
is the
are just constantly high. But yeah, I mean, you've made a
yeah
fair point. Obviously, they've had 2 to 3 seasons of like really good actualized results, right? It's kind of like Gary O'Neill the last 2 seasons before this one. He's
yeah
been overperforming like a madman. And
yeah.
at one point, you might question whether you're wrong about expected data, or maybe he's actually just not great, just like United. But I don't
Hmm.
know. I think the perk at least is that you still have a team that looks like it can move in a positive direction, and generally has, I think, under Amram. But there's been some high highs and low lows, right? Probably just not as consistently dull as the Ten Hag tenure at the start in terms of level of performance. But Southampton, that game was absolutely shocking to me to watch.
It was.
Basically,
I,
United play at the same level as Southampton for around 80 minutes, if not worse, right?
no, and the thing is, Amorim mentioned this, that Liverpool followed by Arsenal was always going to be,
A drop off, yeah.
like everyone was going to be gassed at that point. But I mean, come on, man. Everyone
Do a
played the
bad
FA Cup game.
That's
Let's
true.
not do this. I mean, it's
I
not.
won't do it. I won't do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I won't do it because I also watched who's the other team that absolutely butchered the Southampton game? Maybe not. Maybe I'm just thinking Ipswich and my favorite Tottenham players. But yeah.
Oh my god.
No, I'm just kidding. All right. That kind of stuff aside, shall we jump into captaincy very quickly for this week? We have Haaland, Salah, Palmer, Isak. Nothing too controversial. I mean, not everyone owns Haaland, except for former you. But no, I mean, Salah, Palmer, Isak are now in this order. Is that true? Or is this this is
No,
definitely not right. This
You
is not right.
use the wrong one again.
I've butchered it. Okay.
Yeah,
I
this
probably
is
need
the
to get
one.
cancelled for this. It's Palmer, Salah, Haaland, Isak. Yeah. Sorry. Long work week and just a bad content creator. What can I say? Palmer, Salah, Haaland, Isak. It's not as far apart between Palmer and Salah as it was earlier this week, or even this morning, right before Enzo decides to drop a bomb on us. A decent week for Haaland, I might say, and then Isak a little bit far behind. The Isak situation is basically the reverse of last week with Palmer, I guess. But the difference is you've got Salah now, who bridges the gap. So, any thoughts on captaincy? We've already discussed it previously, but are you said you're still actually looking towards the Palmer cap? Is that right?
So, I was, but
I don't mean
when we were talking
I had to delete my
about
tweet
Palmer,
so I don't get cancelled when I captain Salah.
When we were talking about Palmer, and I started thinking about the Joao Pedro situation as well, right? So,
okay.
What did I mean? Herzler is a waffler, but so I'm not comparing apples to apples. But what he said was, I don't start players until they're capable of playing 95. And then, even though the game state was fairly volatile, 1-0, he subbed off Joao Pedro on 77.
That's a good point, though. I want to make a point on that because he makes that point and he's correct. But we have no idea whether Joao Pedro isn't in the state to be a 95-minute player, because he could have still found himself in a situation where he goes from the bench. So I think people are being quite smart about it both ways, where some people are being hindsight smug because they fortunately put a good player with a good game on the bench and got some nice points. And then there's also the other field of players who are just pretending like people are completely misreading X minutes of certain players, which I think is untrue, given that we know Fabian's a bit of a waffler. And there's still going to be circumstances where Joao Pedro can come off the bench, in my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right. And so I was thinking, okay, with Palmer, I see that as extremely unlikely.
Yeah, same.
Him coming off the bench or even being on the bench, to be honest, because I think their FA Cup game was he on the bench, but other than that, he's not even actually been on the bench for all the EFL Cup games.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a doubt, and they don't even bother putting him on the bench. So I'm fairly confident on that, but is there a chance that he gets subbed on 70 when they're like 2-0 up?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. So if that's the case, then do you need to worry about that or just go for Salah? Because I just refreshed review to see if things have changed even more since we last looked. And it's 0.4 now. The gap is 0.4 EV now per 95. And it's not even going to be per 95 because there's one player who's almost guaranteed to play 95 and the other is
it's
almost
95 versus what you said.
Never going
maybe
to play
80.
Yeah. So
we have seen some early Palmer substitutions this season, especially like if he's taken knocks like in the West Ham game, if he's maybe dealt with a pretty big load within just the match itself. So I think this is unfortunately something that has tilted me towards the Salah captaincy. I was probably a little bit too sleep deprived when I tweeted that there were no doubts about my Palmer captaincy, but if people want to get the Palmer nuclear haul on 75 minutes versus Wolves at home, fair enough. Good for you.
Yeah, but it's more about the thrill as well, right? Because once this game goes,
true.
The next
it is,
2 weeks, you're not even going to think about
there's a risk
captaincy.
element to this decision, right? At least you know that a starting Palmer will still run Salah close on EV. And if you really want to fight against Salah, which some people in this podcast like to do frequently,
lock me up.
Yeah, what's the crime?
EV. Well, there have been crimes against EV this season, but unfortunately they were warranted and they've gone very badly.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a weird situation when you don't own some of the top picks in the game, because you can either choose to confront that player consistently, which sometimes it does turn out very poorly. And I think you've had Isak for a few weeks now, but we can also fairly say there's a couple of people fighting the same battle versus Isak, and it's quite brutal when it goes that way. And at the same time, we also know some of our peers who at the start of the season or at various points of the season before Haaland's baselines were, I think, quite average or became quite average, and City itself too, because it seemed like the progression of City was more like defense went a little bit worse, significantly worse, attack barely dropped off slightly, and then everything starts to capitulate until some recent okay performances. But if you look actually at the expected data for the recent performances, they're still absolutely awful on defense, probably still very good on offense. So my main point after that long waffle is I think it's a very tough position that a lot of managers do put themselves in, and when it goes poorly it just looks awful. But I think we forget sometimes it can look so good when it goes well. And I think that happened, for example, with people who started with Salah at the start of the season, even though maybe it was sacrifice of a little bit of EV, maybe a bit more robust, of course, because we always knew that for those of us who started the season with Haaland, we always knew that he was going to be a transfer to Salah, right? So some people kind of skipped that step. Some people even wildcarded on into Salah. I think Trout did when Haaland had what?
That is what I was going to come to.
Southampton Leicester game.
Southampton.
And sometimes that works so well, but that was basically a sin in EV terms in a sense, and maybe it comes down to different valuations of free transfer value. But I think kudos to anyone who does actually fight that battle. But I'm just fortunate that I haven't found myself in that position this season.
That's a fair assessment. Oh, also closing out on captaincy, just we were discussing how much home versus away has had an impact, right? So just for comparison, Haaland at 10 EV against Ipswich at home, and he has 7 EV for Ipswich away. So that just shows you the magnitude of drop, that a combined effect of City's team strength. Some hit to his own baseline numbers perhaps, but I don't think it's going to be sizable. And then of course the away factor. So it's on clear display with 30% reduction in EV.
Maybe we could produce a visual. I mean, I don't know if you could, because you've done visuals on home and away before, right? In Big 5 leagues. And I'm sure you have.
I still have the data. Yeah. I still have the data.
You have it updated?
I can update it.
Maybe you can update it and actually just let us know what the trend is. Because I know a few years back, I remember, honestly, when I was first getting to grips with analytics, I remember you posting that sort of visual of home and away in Big 5 and in kind of in anticipation for. I know you were just talking to me about when Spain would finally host. We're hosting the World Cup, right? Yeah, we're hosting World Cup. What the impact would be on a home team potentially, right? Given the big swings in home and away, even within La Liga. So, I mean, let's have a look at that, because I do feel just instinctively that that's not a shout out or reference, by the way, but I'm kidding. That home and away is quite skewed to previous seasons. So maybe that's just like, I don't know, we finally have enough data post-COVID again. I don't know. Or people actually really like football apparently in the stadiums, but we'll see. I heard Doc was in the stadium when Ahmad scored 3 goals, and that was a huge impact. So yeah, shout out to him. Good FPL management there. Any other thoughts?
No, just that it's whenever you get a chance to actually threaten your FPL assets to do better, or else it's a different vibe. So yeah, shout out to Doc.
Yeah, he actually won both in many ways yesterday. So
Yeah, absolutely.
everything came first. All right, let's do a bit of chat Q&A. I'm gonna quickly brush through a bit of chat. Flapjack, I think he was in the meat. He was sat in a shop, but the smell of meat was filling his nostrils. So, yeah, you know, some people are vegan, so please don't post that. So, bravely, David Duke says he's got Palmer tweets now. That's true. I have Palmer tweets, and I probably exacerbated how keen I was on the Palmer captaincy. But yeah, I'm a little bit lower on it now. Derek says, is that Flapjack from Scoutcast? No, that's Flapjack from I think from the retired life, or
yeah,
I was gonna say the unemployment center, but he is employed, so that's a shame. Mo, hello. Hope you're well. Robert Ducky, quack quack to you. That guy says he's enjoyed the review discussion as well. Hello in the late evening. Someone asked about assistant managership. I mean, I am completely cold on playing assistant manager 24. I think that's exclusively triple captain 24 or nothing. And I see the system managership playable, honestly, on any sets of games that includes a double around the 30 plus landscape. So 31, 33, 36, 38. Do as you will. I think there's a lot of narratives injected to them. There's a lot of table positions to be shifted. And whilst it probably actually is going to be a very significant driver of your chip strategy because of how powerful the chip is, it's still really hard to iterate on what the best chip strategy play is. And all my advice would be is probably delay it from 24 unless we somehow get confirmed 24 25, which is it basically impossible that we get double Gameweek 25 news before the Gameweek 24 deadline, or is that still probable?
No, I from what I read, it was probably most likely that we would get it after the deadline.
That's what I'm thinking, right? Which is super
any planning
annoying.
redundant.
Yeah. So you can't plan, basically. You're just gonna have to pray. And the team that you're praying for is Tottenham. So I'm not even against Tottenham, by the way. I'm a big Jets fans fan, and Mel is a Tottenham fan as well, who we love. But yeah, I don't know. Don't put your eggs in a basket like that, I suppose.
Yes.
Basically, it's a sub 50% chance of happening, right? So why even bet that direction?
Oh, you're talking about if people wanted to, let's say, assistant manager slot and then transfer slot to
in the hopes you have another double. Because yeah, you'd be cheesing 2 doubles, which wouldn't be possible anywhere later. But if you can't, you can't be playing slot in double Gameweek 24. That's going to be a Moyes week.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't. That's trolling. In my opinion. Let's see. Derek says on Chelsea, would you start Chalobah? I probably would, honestly. I just think he is fit enough to play. Akiampong had a pretty poor performance. He's probably going to be like, how much integration do you really need to be as playing a central defender? It's not even like the manager knows what central defender he wants to play alongside Colwell anyways. So, you know, I feel like Chalobah has a pretty good chance of starting. Mo making good points on Almiron. I think yeah, we had the same points.
We discussed that, yeah.
That guy said tempted to hold the manager. I think that's fair. 36-38. What to do with Sar? I mean, he's a doubt. I feel like if you don't have a good first sub bench option, this is one of those weeks where you can consider selling. And I really say that because I think still moving between some of the players like Rogers, Semenyo, and fixture optimizing around their good games, and Ahmad as well, is totally fine in FPL right now. I think they're just really strong picks, and they actually do provide you a lot of EV. So moving around them is fine. Whereas if you're moving between João Pedro and some of the other inferior 5.x players, that's not exactly upside. Arkham makes a great point on DCL. He's done nothing wrong. He's also done nothing as well. So,
yes.
Yeah, that guy is Team Odegaard Gordon. Do you own Bruno, right?
Yeah.
Do you regret owning Bruno?
I mean, I got a red card from him
Oh, that's
against
true.
Wolves. I benched him versus Liverpool, and I played him against Southampton.
Right. So
So
the answer is you don't. No,
I don't know, honestly. I didn't have any other option, to be honest.
no, I
And
get
see,
that. To be honest.
I keep coming back to that. If I owned Salah, I would have gone for Mbumo and skipped all of
Oh,
this
right.
Odegaard,
Yeah.
Bruno nonsense. So yeah, I'm not too thrilled, but hopefully there's some repayment of the EV, because that's all I care about at this point.
You know what's an interesting narrative that I'd like to follow for the rest of this season? I'd like to see whether Mbumo's baselines for expected goal involvement in open play are going to tick up. I think they will until the end of the season. But yeah.
But he's still overperforming like a madman, right?
Oh,
so
he is, which is all you want, right? At the end of the day.
I mean, but can you really base projections based on that? That's
no,
the whole
you can't
point.
base projections on that. But what I'm saying is that I think even like our sentiment is we tend to look at, without referring to a model right now, that's what we're trying to say. So we tend to look at npxG and just think, yeah, that's that player right there. And sure, Mbumo's overperforming, but there must be an element, of course, as well, where models aren't actually judging him on his actual just restricted npxG for this season, and he's had much better historical seasons. So they're clearly not taking into account this insane level of overperformance when it comes to finishing, as much as people who are looking at the game and looking at total points are, versus us who are looking at expected data. But
I see what you mean. You end up at the same conclusion, but you take different paths.
Exactly. I tend to think that if I was to take a seasonal bet for the rest of it, like, does he end the season with better npxG than he's set now, where he's actually looked pretty horrendous in open play, I suppose, in terms of the chances he's gotten and created. Yeah, I'd like to see where that goes.
Makes sense.
Who would I bench out of, or who would you bench out of Gabriel, Guardiola, Trent, and Robinson? That's a tough one. Really tough, actually. I think Robinson, but look, if he can get assists from genuinely close to nothing, then who am I to tell you to bench Robinson, right?
Does he not have like 9 assists from 2.4 XA or something crazy?
Something like that. Maybe he's on 3 XA. Give him some credit, It's just 6 assists over performance.
Just a 200% over performance then.
Yeah, that's fine. It's nothing.
Yeah.
If everyone could do that, then I'd be winning FPL, right? Why do you prefer Alisson over Pickford in 24? Well, as I explained, Pickford is really no better to Flecken as a goalkeeper outside of 24, in my opinion. Not because of just the projected numbers in terms of their modeling outputs, but the simple fact that he costs more than Alisson and he still has the same projected numbers as Flecken. So the value in Alisson for me is actually, when I was looking at Pickford versus Flecken, I couldn't see any rotation. And so there's no excess EV that I can benefit from that. I know a lot of people don't believe in rotation, but I do think it generally works long term, right?
Yes.
Do you believe in that? Yeah, fine.
It doesn't work is a different thing, but it has to work. It is something that
because that's how we make decisions every week. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I think it was a rhetorical question. My bad. I am definitely going Alisson because I think there's 2 fixtures at least heading towards 29 before my Gameweek 30 wildcard that I can definitely rotate Flecken and Alisson to get some excess value in terms of fixture gain. And then also Alisson is just inherently a better goalkeeper than Pickford from a clean sheets perspective, I would say, if I was to project, just based on all the data that we've seen so far and just how models are looking at both teams. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's why I want to go for Alisson. The big question, of course, is do I want to spend an additional 0.4 or he's actually only 0.4 different from Pickford, which is also another good argument to
he mention. Dropped once. Okay, that's
exactly.
Interesting.
Alisson's 5.4, Pickford's 5.0. So a lot of people have been buying Pickford recently, probably because they actually kept clean sheets versus Arsenal and Chelsea, and looked really good on defense as they are. But yeah, have not done the same.
I actually had 2 questions about that. Have you thought about those things? Because again, like we've talked about for the last month, the name of the game seems to be predicting the change in EV, right? For players.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking because Moyes is back, firstly, the stylistic difference is going to be probably less emphasis on just defending because that is Dyche's MO. And no one is going to tell him not to do that because he is as advertised. So that's what you always get from him. But with Moyes, there's going to be more emphasis, I'm assuming, on open play. which would mean that perhaps they don't spend all the time trying to not concede. So I don't know what that stylistic difference is going to lead to. Is it going to lead to more npxGC?
How much npxG do you
And
think
then
DCL had versus Aston Villa?
you're going to tell me it's low, but
No.
he definitely did miss 2 big chances. So it's going to be like 0.8.
It was like 0.9. Yeah.
Oh, because I definitely
good.
remember him missing crazy chances.
Yeah,
both times. Yeah. So okay. So 0.9 is crazy actually, and because Villa is a pretty good defense as well to get 0.9 xG against. And the second thing I was going to ask was, if you're just defending and cheesing these nil-nils against good teams, none of your other players in the team with whom, or even the opposition with whom you're competing for bonus points, are scoring that highly, right?
Yeah.
Against someone like Pickford. So I mean, I don't know. That has a substantially less impact, I think, than what Moyes is going to bring in as a stylistic change. I just feel like both those things combined just mean that Pickford has lost his appeal compared to what he was under Dyche.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially at the price point that he's at. 0.4 different from Alisson. I take that. I take Alisson all day.
Yes.
And as I said, if I go from Valdemarsson, I don't have to deal with the blank outcome of Alisson. And I think I don't know if we mentioned it, but yeah, we were looking into a free hit on 29, and the best theoretical team right now, I can afford it within 2.8 value, and that already includes Saka within that team. So,
okay,
that you don't need a lot of money, I suppose, to get a good team on Gameweek 29. If that's what we're concerned about, like team value and all that stuff. Who would you bench out of Jackson, Sarr, Ahmad? I'd bench Sarr easily. Happy Friday to you, Kearney. FPL Yellow Army says, evening guys, really struggling on Salah versus Palmer captaincy. I think I do agree Palmer plays 0 or he starts, but I don't agree with necessarily saying he plays 90, because I think we've seen it some instances where he does get subbed a little bit earlier. And if that has an impact on how you think you'd like to plan this game week out, maybe the one thing was hanging over Salah is, I mean, he's got a Champions League game, but you'd think they don't care so much about that. It's the league right now that's very important for them. So yeah, I think Salah should be playing 95, whereas I can't really say Palmer does play 95. I think he could be playing 78, 80, and who knows if there's very small chance, I suppose, of the injury being aggravated or something like that. It's definitely a higher chance than Salah getting an injury. I'll say that. As far as, let's say, Harry's question on Timber, Munoz, or Robinson, I'd probably bench Robinson there.
Yeah,
and
again,
someone's going to Odegaard to Luis Diaz. I mean, if Jota was out, I'd probably do a move like that. But if he's somehow hanging in and around, I wouldn't do it.
Sorry, would you actually bench Timber over Robinson? I'm assuming Timber will have.
I bench Munoz there. I bench Munoz there.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Munoz.
Yeah, I'd bench Munoz this week.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. I mean, that certainly makes more sense. Okay.
It's just because it's an away game versus West Ham, right?
Yeah, no. And again,
not because I'm like a huge subscriber into Potter, like 11 but hey.
It only took him 2 years to respond to his own tweet,
and all he had. Oh, that's true, actually, yeah. And all Potter had to do was like completely overperform his team's expected data. Nice.
Ooh, yeah, that's facts.
That's fine. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Any other sort of closing thoughts, JD, for today?
No, I just think we've already given viewers a PSA that now Salah is at 100% ownership on this podcast, so we'll at least maintain the rank, even if I don't improve, I'll at least maintain the rank at 4.6 million. So yeah, there's that.
That's true, actually. Yeah. Maybe we should bring that thing where we just put our MD ranks back in the pod instead.
You see, the tragic thing is, like I said, I've already given up on so much MD that it's not even going to help me cope with the season. So I don't know. We'll probably have to invent a new metric to cope with what's happened.
And anyways, you've got a 2-digit rank on the pod right now as well, so it's all good.
Hey, let's go. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. Please make sure to subscribe and like the video, and hopefully we'll be back next week.
Right.
See you next week. Bye.